Because that's crazy. You had 10 weeks to build your team.
We were talking about, do we think the players actually even really know each other's names? Like, there's 30 new people arrived in Sydney.
Welcome everyone to the third episode of AFLW Inside Out. I'm Laura Spurway. I'm here with Meg Mac. Hello, Meg.
Hello, Laura. Great to be here again.
Late night for you?
Late night for me. Went to the footy and I'll talk about it later, but great new Aussie show out as well.
Did some binging on TV.
I did. Don't tell work.
Now, we will get to the Hawks and the D's game later in this episode, but being Friday, it means it's Guest Friday, special Guest Friday, and joining us today is a woman who is packing her bags from the Sydney Swans as their Executive General Manager of AFLW to head to the UK as Director of Performance at Chelsea FC Women. Now, the team was actually here in Sydney this week, so we were talking about it and thought it'd be an opportune time to speak to Kate Mahoney. Kate, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Congratulations on the job. It's huge. I can't imagine how you felt when you got the news that you were going to Chelsea.
Yeah, it was a bit of a whirlwind because it wasn't something that was on my radar at all. I'm extremely happy here at Swans. I love the club, I love the team, and they approached me, so it wasn't really anything I was thinking about, and I've never had that situation before. It's kind of just dropped in my life and I've had to make a decision, but at the end of the day, we decided, I guess as a family, it'd be a really good adventure to go over there. And then from a career perspective, I guess I've built my career trying to create environments for women athletes to thrive, and what better place to do it in one of the biggest clubs in the world and see if I can make my mark there. So
we'll talk about how that job came about and what you're going to be doing there in a little bit. But with the Swans, you joined there in 2021. You had a big job on your hands in terms of how little time you had to get the team together and get them ready for a season of football. Do you remember those early days?
I do. The truncated timeline was, I guess, a big factor in how we went about it in the end, because we just had to, it couldn't be perfect. We just had to go. We had to find players, we had to find staff who were willing to, start work within days or weeks, really, to get the team built. The advantage of it was so many teams had come before us, and so the club before my time even had done a heap of work on what they wanted the program to look like, what facilities we needed, and so all those things were in train, and they knew what environment they wanted to bring these female athletes into. So a lot of the work of a club and the culture change, and I guess culture evolution of the club to have a men's and women's team, that had already taken place. But the early days of trying to recruit athletes and get them to move, I think back then it was 34,000 was the salary, right? And asking someone to move to Sydney and live for 34,000 with a couple of weeks' notice, it's not exactly the most attractive proposition. So it was hard work.
I want to get to the culture question in just a second, but when you have limited preparation, limited funds, soft cap limitations, what is it in your program that you prioritise from a performance point of view in those early initial appointments?
Yeah, my background's as a physio and as a sports physio, so I guess I've been in those technical roles like really close in with the athletes, trying to give them the best opportunity to perform, and that probably shapes a little bit about how I think, which might be a little bit different, I guess, to others. Obviously you need a coach, and coaching is probably the your number one thing. If you don't have a game plan, you don't have coaches to help develop skill, you're probably not growing anywhere fast. So coaching was the first thing, and then the second thing was just spending as much of our cap as we could on our high performance team, so trying to make sure we had really good people close to the athletes in terms of medical physio who could help them, and obviously strength and conditioning who can help them, I guess, get the most out of themselves as athletes, and ensure that we were setting them up for success to be able to play the game plan that the coach was wanting us to play.
And on the culture front, when I started at the Cats, I was lucky enough to be there at the beginning, and what always fascinated me was the relationship between a brand new team that was trying to create its own identity and speaking to 160 plus year old culture that was so defined. And I look at Sydney and I think there's a similar proposition there. The Bloods culture is so strong, and yet the team is trying to establish itself, contribute to that culture, adopt it. How did you guide them through that piece?
Yeah, that was probably one of the more interesting bits of the build, and something I hadn't done before, because the previous jobs where I had kind of built departments or been involved in teams, they'd already had their own identity. So I guess with Swans, we had 148 years of a men's team, and a very successful men's team at that, one who had sustained success in the last particularly 25 years. So in terms of educating everyone when they came in, we made sure everyone understood what the club had stood for in the past years and where it had come from. And I think that's really important to acknowledge where it's come from, but also give the girls license and give the playing group and the staff license to decide how we want to take it forward within those club values. So I think in terms of what we did for it, we had a lot of education with, Dane Rampey did some. We had John Longmire speak to, coaches, players, and try and understand where they'd been. And we adopted the things we could that felt right. And then on the other hand, the playing group had to work out for themselves what they wanted to stand for. And that's an evolution in itself, as you'd know, Meg. It's not our first year, I think, our trademark and our values, it's evolved since then quite a lot. And I think the men's have evolved every year as well. So it's not unique to the women. But in terms of that grit, determination, I mean, we could adopt that. That's what we were in this, phase where really 10 weeks doesn't really give you a platform to succeed. So we had to stick to, how we wanted to go about it and just keep fighting, I guess, and keep showing up each week, trying to get a little bit better and a little bit better, which is probably what made season 2 and getting to finals and stuff so rewarding, is the fact we knew we'd been through that really hard time and stuck it out.
Because that's crazy. You had 10 weeks to build your team. And you had a 10-week pre-season heading into the first season. 10 weeks with brand new personnel, brand new players.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure how cohesive you can get in that time period.
Yeah. Well, I remember the first training session, and Scott Gowans, the inaugural coach, we were talking about, do we think the players actually even really know each other's names? Like, there's 30 new people arrived in Sydney. On the flip side of that, being in those challenging times sometimes galvanises you as well. And I guess that was the opportunity in it. We were all in it together. At that stage, we were training at night. It just happened to be the wettest Sydney winter I can remember. And it was just pouring, this rain coming in sideways each night. Our kit hadn't arrived, so we didn't have rain jackets for anybody. It was just, I just remember thinking, and the hot food had arrived in the foyer, and everyone I'd smell it as you come in. You're like, oh, meal would be good right now. It's 9 o'clock at night. We're all heading home for the.
Lucky you're going to the UK.
Yeah. I'll get used to that. But those moments, I think, are the ones that bring you together. Sometimes the staff and a playing group, right? I think if it's all really smooth and it's really easy, you don't necessarily have those moments to bond over. And there's some of my fondest memories actually of building the team is those that tougher times where we all had to pull together and everyone had to, I guess, just keep focused on the fact that, we were building something, and it probably wasn't all going to go right the first year, but hopefully over time, and hopefully that's what I'll leave as, I guess, my kind of legacy to the club is the program is a valued part of our club, and hopefully we'll just keep getting better and better every year.
It's really significant, I think, when I look back at the Swans beginning the competition, how much of an impact you seem to make from a membership, audience engagement, attendance, and clear integration of men's and women's programs point of view. Is that something that you learned to prioritise, having looked at every other team enter the competition?
Yeah, well, like I said, we had a steering committee, which actually was part of appointing me. So I had no football experience, and the steering committee, what that group of people did was looked at what's happened in the competition before and what this job as leading this program really needed. And in that, they thought, we know football, we're a football club, we know football. What we don't know is women's high performance. And that's kind of how I ended up in the role. And so I guess in terms of learning from other clubs, perhaps in other clubs, they had prioritised just football people, and people hadn't understand the women's program and those nuances and differences with how female athletes respond and what they need to feel comfortable and belong in an environment. And the second thing I think, which again happened, this isn't any credit to me, it's to all the people who led at the club. So Andrew Pridham, Tom Harley, is there'd been, and Nat Fagg, who'd led the the bid to enter the competition. There'd been some really conscious decisions and strategic decisions along the way not to enter early on when we weren't ready. So it would have been, and I think some of our fans and members really wanted us to launch a team from that first year, but we had no facilities for our female athletes. We hadn't secured where I am right now, which is the Royal Hall of Industries, which is our high performance facility, which has change rooms for our men's, women's and our academy programs, and is purpose built, I guess, to in-house all the programs. So in holding off, it meant when we did go, we had that, I guess, we'd gained the knowledge from others, but we'd also really thought strategically about how we wanted to enter the competition and therefore what we needed to make sure the female athletes felt like they belonged. So a lot of that integration became almost organic in the way we operated around the club, and there'd been a long period of evolving as a club. And in terms of the membership, I remember we finished our first season without a win, but we had the most members. Again, that was a strategic campaign by our founder membership team to educate our members on how great this was going to be for the evolution of our club. And I don't think you'll find anyone inside the club or even in our, I can't speak for the fan base, but inside our club, it's been a really positive thing having a second program in the club. I remember some of the male athletes saying it's really cool, we can now cheer for our own club, because you can never have anyone to cheer for unless you were playing. You're playing, but they had a team to cheer for, and I think, that attitude has been awesome.
Yeah, shout out to Hayley. I think it was part of your membership team. She ended up at the Cats and we learned a lot from her. So it takes real champions from within the club. I'm interested, you mentioned the high performance and giving athletes what they need and your own background. How did you go with knowing what athletes need to perform and the provisions that we need to provide them with, and yet there are limitations around access, hours, their experience. How do you sort of navigate that in the first years and I suppose ongoing?
Yeah, that's probably one of the harder things coming into a soft cap environment. I hadn't been in a soft cap environment before in my previous positions, so it was one of the hardest things to get my head around. I guess I always draw back to the principle of if a male and a female athlete walk into our club, I want them to have the same opportunity to reach their potential. And I think everyone in football would agree with that statement. You want them to have the same opportunity. Unfortunately, with a soft cap, that's so different. The men's is almost 5 times the women's. You do have to make those decisions as to what you spend in. But I made really conscious decisions to make sure the resource was around the athlete to try and ensure we did give them the best chance. So I existed without an operations manager for the entire time I've done this job. So you take on more administration. We've prioritised medical spend, physio spend, strength and conditioning spend, and ensure we had good people in those roles to be able to give the opportunities to the athletes. I still think there's a bit to go. I think it's something, I've done some advocacy to the AFL about, where I think that should go. But I guess on principle, I believe that a male and female athlete should walk in and have the same access to experienced practitioners, a medical team that can make really good decisions, and a strength and conditioning team that can give them the best chance for these athletes to succeed. And I think everyone's doing that differently at different clubs. The blackout period for us means that you have a bit of cap relief then, but then there's lots of different ways to cut and dice the cap. But I guess principally, we try and give every athlete that walks into this club the same experience.
Kate, you mentioned the nuances there between male and female athletes. This is a pretty big question, but what are the main ones that you think are different and that need addressing in a female elite sports program?
Yeah, so if I talk specifically about AFLW, I guess the first thing is it's gone from being a community sport to professional, but in saying that it's not full-time yet. And so there's a lot of elements around recovery and training design that we need to consider that will be different to male athletes. On our days off, our athletes are working or studying, and most of them are either on their feet or doing something else that has cognitive demand. So, and to give you an example, we have 2 doctors on our team who go and stand on their feet sometimes on their off days. So they're not really off. They're on their feet operating or, in the emergency room. That's pretty full on. So you need to zoom out of training design. And then in terms of the health conditions, you need to be really aware, I guess, of the health screening of female-specific conditions and making sure we've got that covered from a health perspective. And that's things like pelvic health, physiology, making sure we understand the differences in rates of concussion, males versus females. Our female athletes, if you look at the literature across lots of sports, not just AFL but cricket, are much more likely to have concussions. So therefore, how do we need to design our training to ensure we teach our athletes how to tackle and where the head should be and all those kind of things. So I think there's a lot of areas you can look at. And then probably the biggest one, which I found coming into AFLW, is because the pathway hadn't been there. A lot of our athletes had a low training age. So they hadn't been in structured training pathways in the gym, running programs, skills programs for their whole junior career. They'd been down at the local club probably twice a week. And to go from that to 4 times a week in a professional kind of setup where the standard's higher, the intensity's higher, there has to be a step change approach, or you lose a lot of athletes on the way. So how do we do that better? So trying to, I guess, doing everything from training design, understanding your athletes on their day off aren't necessarily recovering, right through to health conditions, and then how we load our athletes to give them the best chance on staying on the pitch and actually performing.
Surely there are issues as well then, or a particular challenge with being Sydney-based. You don't have a whole lot of local talent, and the second-tier competitions, we've had an announcement this week, but aren't what they are in different states.
Yeah, the announcement this week's huge. If we can have the Sydney Football League up and going, it'll give our athletes, particularly those who maybe don't get picked up in their draft year, an option to stay in Sydney and continue to develop and come through and hopefully be, footballers that can end up on a list. When we first started, there's kind of into 2 categories. When we first started, there wasn't many Sydney-based athletes, so we went and recruited heavily from Victoria. We moved 24 athletes up from Victoria. The last draft, we took 3 academy athletes, and we've got 2 debuting this weekend. So, and the next crop of academy athletes are really promising as well. So with our academy, we've been able to start to build some of our own talent here in Sydney, and I think the academies are incredibly important to keep young female talented athletes in football in Sydney. The Sydney Football League hopefully will develop and give them a place for all the ones who don't get drafted to then go and play, and we create a really good ecosystem of both community and professional women's football in Sydney. But early doors, we had to go and recruit interstate. It was hard work. We were probably ended up we probably ended up targeting mostly athletes who hadn't had their opportunity, were probably good enough to play in the league, and were going to take a chance on it. And then the other side of it, which I'm incredibly passionate about, is making sure we gave them the education opportunities, the work opportunities, and connected them with people to ensure they could also have meaningful life outside football here in Sydney, to build, I guess, if they wanted to, a life here that's beyond football.
So hearing you speak, I'm kind of getting a little bit of an idea why Chelsea might have been interested in you for a job. When you say that they approached you, was it literally out of the blue?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I had a few missed
Talk
phone
about
calls
how good you are. Go on. Say it.
No. Yeah. I was as surprised as anyone, to be honest. Had a few missed calls, and then something came through on my LinkedIn, and yeah. And to be honest, I started from a position, I think I'm in a fantastic club and probably, one of the best organisations to work at in elite sport in the world. So I started as a position I really didn't want to go. Probably where I ended up, was two things, like I said earlier. One, the family opportunity. I've lived in the UK for 10 years previously, so I've done it, but my husband hasn't, and we've got, little 2-year-olds, and we thought the twins, what a time to take them for an adventure. They're not in school yet. It's actually easier probably to move them in some ways than when they're, a bit older, if we're ever going to do this. And then the second thing is just the unrestricted nature of the support they can put around players at a football club like Chelsea, and the all-in approach they've gone. So they have a CEO of the women's. The women's has every resource you could possibly need to set up a really good program. And I guess just a chance for me to test myself on the biggest stage and see if, I can make a difference there, and I can, I guess, help these women succeed and get the most out of their careers. And it's as much a test as anything. Like, I feel like I'm taking a bit of a risk. I've never left a job I love as much as this one ever. So, it's not all roses. There's a little bit of nerves there, but hopefully I can do a good job.
No, it's so exciting. I was fortunate in 2023 to go over and had a little look at Liverpool and have had some exposure to the tiniest bit to the people that are in the Arsenal program, and it really struck me over there. There's so much for us to learn from that competition, and as you say, all the resources and how platformed these athletes are and how they're marketed and all that. And yet I also looked at it and thought, I think there are things that they can learn from us. I feel like we have a really integrated approach across both programs. What do you anticipate you can take from your experience here and give in the other direction? Because there's obviously so much the other way.
Yeah, probably one of the things, like, I think in football, I haven't spent much time with Chelsea yet, so I'm not in the inner workings yet. So this is all just, I guess, my musings on it. I think one of the things with football is because the players can be traded and they can be basically transferred without them really wanting to be moved on, and they're a bit more like a commodity. What that leads to is this perception that they're not cared for as much by their club, or there's like a divide between what both the club and the player are trying to achieve. And I think in AFLW and the other sports I've worked at, when you get them to get the most out of anyone, whether it's an athlete or a staff member, I think they have to feel cared for. And I think we have to work out where that balance is for them feeling cared for and then being brought on the journey. Because at the end of the day, them playing well and making the most out of their career is good for them, and it's also good for the club. And it's good if they want to go and play for their country as well. So how we find that balance and that care aspect before we ask them for performance. And I really believe sometimes in elite sport, we forget that these people are human and they wake up every day just like us, and sometimes don't feel like going to work, and sometimes don't feel like training, and sometimes have had a tough day with something else that affects their training. And so how can I bring, I guess, that lens to a performance environment and still be unashamedly, reaching for the stars and trying to get the best performance and get wins on the board, but also getting to the point where you know your athletes so well that we can make nuance around their program around them to ensure we do get the most out of them, and we know exactly what they're feeling and how we can get, I guess, the most out of them on every day they come in to train or play for the club, no matter whether it's AFLW or, I guess, Chelsea.
When I was thinking about you and your appointment, I was thinking, what is it about Australian sports professionals that make you in demand overseas? I mean, we're sort of known for our hardworking culture, or obviously known for our outdoor lifestyle and what that means in terms of how good we are with various sports. But, Australians tend to be coveted overseas. And I think the shame of it is sometimes that we lose our best to overseas. And so how do you tussle with something like that, where you go, this is a great opportunity, we're a small pond here in Australia, I'll go over into the big pond, but we want to be able to keep people here who are really qualified to do the best for the sporting codes that we have here.
Yeah, it was something that I wrestled with, because also I think I really believe in the AFLW league, and I really believe in women's sport in Australia. I guess when people take these opportunities, whether it's me or, I'm sure there'll be others who have and will in time, I kind of see, well, I'm going to come back at some stage. So hopefully I can bring the knowledge back into Australia. And I did a Churchill Fellowship a number of years ago now, I think in 2019, which looked at female health and best practice around helping female athletes, I guess, succeed. And what that taught me, and what the purpose of that is to go and get knowledge from outside Australia and bring it back, because we don't know everything. And I guess I kind of see that as this as well. I'm going to go out, hopefully learn a whole lot of new stuff, grow as a person, grow as a leader, and hopefully one day be able to bring it back and impact Australian sport in some way. So yeah, it is a wrestle though. I don't think we lose all our talent though. I think, there's a lot of great people working in high performance sport in Australia who will stay, and then the new knowledge that comes in and the knowledge that goes out and then comes back, I think that's all valuable to our system.
Possibly final one from me. I've heard people, I know in the recent tour, Chelsea people speak about the next frontier being filling Stamford Bridge week in, week out, and that of course spoke to the challenge that our sport has here, and as we look to have stadium games, double headers, and yet all play in Sydney at venues where it can look packed to the rafters every time. What's your perspective on this sort of next frontier for women's sport globally? We've done a lot of comparisons, but what do we share in our ambition?
Yeah, well, Chelsea have moved all their home games to Stamford Bridge this year, this season for the first time, and I think it was a really big decision from them, a very brave decision from what I understand, but they believe they can build it. I was also part of Australian cricket just before they filled the NCG for that World Cup. I resigned just a little bit before that, but I went to that match and watched, and I remember when the players were told about it about a year earlier, and they just really didn't believe and couldn't understand how the stadium was going to be filled, and were almost a bit sceptical. And I think there's multiple lenses to look at it. I went to the Australia Island game at North Sydney Oval the other night, and it was amazing. It was packed. There was a great atmosphere. If you're a young kid and you watch that, you're inspired and you want to be like those girls and you want to turn up again. I don't think the spectacle would have been the same if we moved to the SCG. But, for example, we're playing a double header next weekend, and I think that's a really important first step to starting to expose fans to the fact that these big stadiums, if we turn up, we can create atmosphere and give our athletes the best chance to play on really good surfaces and in really good conditions with great change rooms and great facilities, and show them what it looks like at the next step. So I think there needs to be a balance as we build. We obviously need to keep close to those fans who feel like they can hang over the fence and get an autograph and really see these girls close up. But also we need to have these moments where we do try and test and see what we can feel at the SCG, and show the athletes themselves what it looks like when you're playing on a big stage, how the field looks, and also the quality of the product for broadcast, which I also think is huge, because a lot of people now consume on digital and on KO and things, and when you don't have a good surface, sometimes the skills look really poor, but then when you're there on the ground and it's windy and there's potholes and stuff, that's why it doesn't look good. Whereas the first game at Marvel looked fantastic. Yeah. And that's why, last night was fantastic. The game last night was fantastic. The game last weekend was fantastic on good surface at Marvel. So they look faster, the ball moves better, and then it's a better product to watch. So I think that Chelsea are probably a little bit further ahead in the fact they have the resourcing to try and to go big straight away, and W probably has to wrestle a little bit with where you put your resources. Do we want more games? Do we want bigger stadiums? And there's people much smarter than me that sort all that out.
Well, Kate, we think you're smart enough given the job that you've landed. We're so excited for you. Congratulations again. You buried the lead a little bit there when you said you had to go with twins who were not yet 2 years old. And good luck.
I'd go to be in the same program as Ellie Carpenter. That's what I'd just
we
say.
love
Yes.
Ellie. We love Ellie.
Shout out Ellie.
Kate, good luck. Enjoy it. What an adventure. I hope the kids behave on that long haul flight. But it's only one, and then they're there.
And we're there. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Not at all. Kate Mahoney there, who's off to be the Director of Performance at Chelsea FC. What a coup to have people in our AFLW programs being recognised on a global stage like that. And I don't want to frame it like it's, you've got to go overseas and be recognised by one of these big clubs that everybody knows to be valued. But it is an indication of the level of professionals that we have here in Australia, that you get a call like that from the club to you, you're not even seeking it out, and then you land the job.
No, it's fantastic, and I think we had evidence in the conversation as to why that call would have been made.
Yep.
Kate that was amazing, and even to the extent that the AFL publishes a media release about how great it is, you're thinking, would love to keep her, but no, deserving of the celebration and a really exciting time. And we'll just have to keep advancing our competition to lure these people and their talent and their learnings back to grow our game. But I don't know, I feel personally, whether it's as a broadcaster, as a player, as an administrator, the opportunity to play international sport is appealing, and be involved in international sport is there for everyone. So I think many of us have been fortunate to grab on and have an experience of professional, semi-professional sport because of AFLW, but the dream is what those people are doing as well. So completely understandable, and so happy we got that chat in before she jetted off.
We'll be keeping tabs on Kate for sure. Now, we did mention we would go inside the game last night. It was the Hawks in Melbourne at Icon Park. Clear air on the Thursday night. D's kicking away in the fourth. 19-point win in the end. Mia Roston, great outing for her in her first game for the D's. 4 goals. Taylor Harris, physicality, I think, on display, especially when she was moved into the centre. And Kate Hoy, your fave. What a star.
Are we declaring that?
She's your fave.
You were with me in the commentary box and it was giving, she's my fave.
Yep.
No, a fantastic game. And I think for different reasons, the first 2 games that we've had have shown different kinds of games. The first one was sort of more dominant, but the ebb and flow of the game last night and the way that teams owned quarters in different ways with different methodology was great to see, and to think that we were starting 41 points apiece into the fourth quarter was a really exciting prospect. We spoke on the night about the physicality of the game, I think getting each team into the lead when they took it all back into the game. Melbourne have such elite skill that they've got a new coach, but that story hasn't changed. I think the way they maintained possession and moved the ball, transitioned the ball in the first quarter was a sight to behold. And then through sheer skill, they were able to capitalise on the scoreboard. And I'm sure Mia Austin really would have appreciated the delivery that she was receiving. And then, as you noted, Hawthorn gathered themselves at quarter time and really began a physical assault. And at that point, you were second guessing your tips?
I was, because I did say the D's were premiers. I thought after one quarter, I'm an absolute genius. I've nailed this one for the year. But I mean, the Hawks, that combo up front, adding Jack Dupay to that, with Anya McDonald just being as dominant as she is, that's going to cause a lot of headaches this year. It
certainly is. What a great recruitment. I think we saw the role clarity as well in that. Jack Dupay taking some really important contested marks at the half-forward line, and then McDonald is obviously an supreme athlete, the way she can move, and her left foot is used to open the ground up the field, but then she knows how to capitalise on the scoreboard. And I really enjoyed, to use the word again, her physicality. I think that's something that's continued to progress in her game as she's become accustomed to our code, which is naturally more contested than Gaelic. Her leadership's coming to the fore, her passion for the game. She's obviously already an All-Australian, and you noted that has it been McDonald or bust? I'm not sure that everyone else in the team would agree with that, but she was certainly what got them back into the game. Eliza West was really impressive against her old side. That grunt in the middle.
Lucy Wales.
Lucy Wales. So I'm really guilty at times of not celebrating or recognising ruck dominance, but it was so clear to see last night. She was doing it around the ground. There was the unfortunate injury early in to Hose, the Melbourne ruck on debut. Hopefully she'll be okay. It's just I shouldn't say just an ankle, but with her history, we're happy that it's not a knee. Lucy Wales's physical presence around the ground was really important. Clearances were fairly even, but her aerial presence, her ability to, she earned shots on goal. Would have loved to see her kicker for her first career major, but she made a statement, and then she had other midfielders go with her.
So Icon Park on a Thursday night, as I mentioned, clear air for the women's game, no men's footy on. They did the same last year with Carlton and Collingwood. Did it work?
Yes, and now it depends by what measure, I think. It was fantastic to be there, and we spoke a little bit about the crowd. I think we were probably up against it from the teams that were playing, but you work on Thursday night footy, and attendance isn't really what exists for.
Ratings are really good, but I don't know if that's necessarily what they were going for. I think, like you said, the deck means that the style or the level of the game, the standard of the game was better, and that's what Kate was speaking about as well in our interview. But the reality is that fan bases of Melbourne and Hawks are southeast. You're trying to get to icon on a Thursday night. It's tricky.
And a lot of the fans at AFLW are young families. I'm sure they're school-age children who are going to school the next day. So we'll see how the broadcast goes. The thing that sort of weighs heavy on me a little bit is that you're riding the wave of tick cross in terms of, was it a success, wasn't it a success? Did we meet the crowd, didn't we meet the crowd? Instead of just, I know what the alternative is, just enjoying it. And those of us that are there, that are in the sport, still feel the energy and feel the excitement, and I don't think can argue the fact that the season in terms of the football has gotten off to a really stellar start.
And one of the other reasons they've got to look at Icon is the broadcast facilities. I mean, there was no men's game, so it meant there was a lot of media there last night, which is great to see, but not all grounds in AFLW can facilitate all of the media. So if you want that coverage, you've got to look at going to some of those venues that can accommodate everybody. So that's the other reason we were there. Now we'll go through our tips quickly for the rest of the weekend before we go. Saturday, North Melbourne and Geelong.
I've ebbed and flowed on this because I feel like it's safety net. I've gone North just from a safety net from a point of view of North haven't lost in a long time and how do you tip against them? Safety in terms of, obviously, I would love to see the Cats win, and so to think that might happen and get the hopes up as I once did as a player for that. Unfortunately, hope doesn't get you very far as a player. You got to do the work. But I think if it's going to be, not if it's ever going to happen, but there's a real chance ahead of Geelong because of some of the injuries at North and some of the additions to the Cats team. There's a lot of excitement about how they're playing, and I'm waffling on because I'm avoiding making a tip.
North.
But I've got some listeners in my old team, so I'll go Geelong.
Okay, you go Geelong.
Flip the script, 13 points.
I'll go North. Richmond, Collingwood. It's tricky.
Really tricky. I think some of the leadership that's on the sidelines for Collingwood will mean that Richmond get over the line. I'm
going to go Richmond. I think overhauling all the staff, we'll see some positive changes in that program. So I'm going Richmond. Gold Coast Bulldogs. Gold Coast 10 debutants.
So exciting. And I think they will win an awful lot with this crop going forward. I think it's too far to
round one.
Sorry, it's not too far to round one. I love the selection, really excited by it. I think it's perhaps too tall an order round one. So I'll go the Doggies, who have apparently really impressed in the preseason.
I'm saying the Dogs too. Sunday, Essendon and Brisbane. It's at Windy Hill, but I'll go Brisbane. You?
I'll go Essendon. I think, Bonnie, Mads, back them in for big games, and I think this could be a real turning point for the Dons. They had some great matches against the Blues in the preseason, so why not?
Adelaide and Sydney?
Adelaide. I think we said earlier in the week, I think tales of Adelaide's, not demise, but the fact that they may be on a downer, I think is possibly overstated. So I'm going to go the Crows.
I'm going the Crows as well. Freo and Port Adelaide. This is an interesting matchup for me. This is really intriguing, and I'm not sure which way I'm going to go on it. What do you think?
I'll go Port.
Okay.
Port Adelaide.
I'm going to say Port as well. GWS and West Coast, another doubleheader at NG on Sunday.
Angie. I'm going with that. Angie.
Is it that posh there? I'm going to say West Coast.
Yes, I'm going with you, West Coast as well. Two teams that I would love to see have some greater success this year, but I think star power at West Coast is really strong. I think that's true of both teams. We'll see how their top five compares to the bottom five on the list, and how that you see sort of raising the floor for them week in, week out. Their best has been really impressive. It's about earning that consistency.
All right, everyone. Enjoy the footy this weekend. Do not keep tabs on our tips. We do them week to week, but we don't want to tally
Sprung
at the end
this
of the year,
morning,
do we,
so
Meg?
can you tell that there wasn't a lot of... But it's gut instinct to start with, and we'll get more precise as we go
hope
on.
your team wins, don't we, Meg?
We do.
We hope your team wins, and come back on Monday and listen to us. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you Monday.